presidential candidate, only to lose in a landslide. 4 others had made it to the New Hampshire primary, then failed. But now he had one. His theory had been born out of a very simple fact. For the last 40 years, every American president bar one has hailed from 2 very elite clubs, state governors and federal senators. George Bush was the only exception. He was a member of the House of Representatives. But, as General Charles Russell had also discovered, men of influence were also men of extremely unpredictable health. The ravages of their political lifestyles, high stress, constant travel, chronic lack of exercise, often took a great toll on their bodies. And while getting the transmitter onto the heart of a sitting president was nigh on impossible, getting it onto a man's coronary muscle before he became president wasn't out of the question. Because, after all, a man is just a man before he becomes president. The statistics for 15 years spoke for themselves. 42% of U.S. senators had had gallbladder surgery. Of the remaining 58%, only 4 would avoid some sort of surgical procedure during their political careers. Kidney and liver operations were very common. Several heart bypasses, they were the easiest operations during which to plant the device, and not a few prostate problems. And then there'd been this one. Halfway through his second term as governor, he'd complained of chest pains and laboured breathing. An exploratory procedure performed by a staff surgeon at the Air Force Base just outside Houston had revealed an obstruction in the governor's left lung, detritus from excessive smoking. Through a deft procedure involving state-of-the-art fibre-optic cameras and ultra-small wire-controlled surgical instruments, the obstruction was removed and the governor told to quit smoking. What the governor did not know, however, was that during that operation, the Air Force surgeon had attached a radio transmitter the size of a pinhead to the outer wall of the governor's heart. Constructed of a semi-organic material, the transmitter would ultimately take on the appearance of a harmless blood clot, thus masking it from discovery. Anything larger or more regularly shaped would be detected on an incoming president's first physical. As a final precaution, it was inserted into the governor's body cold, unactivated. The White House's anti-bugging system would detect an unauthorized radio signal in an instant. Activation would occur when the time was right. As usual, at the end of the procedure, one final operation was performed. A fine-grained mould of the governor's right hand was made. It would also be necessary when the time came. The guards came for him 10 minutes later. Cuffed and chained, Caesar Russell was escorted from his cell and taken to the waiting plane. The trip to Indiana passed without incident, as did the sombre walk to the injection room. The record would later show that as he lay spread-eagled on the injection table, like a horizontal Christ, his arms and legs bound with worn leather straps, the prisoner had no last words, no final expression of remorse. In fact, he never said a word. At 3:37 p.m. on the 20th of January, the grim procedure took place. 50 milligrams of sodium thiopental, to induce unconsciousness, was followed by 10 of pancuronium bromide, to stop respiration, and finally 20 milligrams of potassium chloride, to stop Russell's heart. At 3:40 p.m., 3 minutes later, Lieutenant General Charles Sampson Russell was declared dead. Since the general had no living relatives, his body was taken from the prison by members of the United States Air Force for cremation. At 3:52 p.m., 12 minutes after he'd been declared officially dead, as his body was being rushed through the streets of Terre Haute, Indiana, in the back of an Air Force ambulance, 2 electroshock defibrillator paddles were applied to the dead general's chest and charged. "Clear!" one of the Air Force medical personnel yelled. The general's body convulsed violently. It happened on the 3rd application of the paddles. On the electrocardiogram monitor on the wall, a small spike appeared. The general's heartbeat had resumed. Within moments, it was pulsing at a regular rhythm. As General Russell well knew, death occurs when the heart is no longer able to deliver oxygen to the body. The act of respiration, breathing, oxygenates a person's blood, and then the